Time, the wonderful Philip Woodford.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody. Well, here I am again, not frightened off, but in fact, desiring of more of the opportunity that this gives, not just to do a talk, but to have all these lovely people gather, and there's some lovely friends in the audience, some who have come again, so I clearly did enough right in the first one. But this is different tonight. Teasing you with a title, Why King Charles is Really the Godfather, or Why We Speak Like What We Do. And it's interesting that today, as you know, was the opening of Parliament. So we had the King's speech. You think we just throw this stuff together, don't you? Actually, I had no idea that it was the King's speech, but I am going to be talking about what it is. If you'd missed the King's speech, one of the highlights, he said, "My government's legislative program will be based on the principles of security, fairness, and opportunity for all." Now, I'm not claiming to be an impressionist, but the reason I do a little bit of Charles as best I can is that I'm a fan of accents, a fan of the way that we speak, the diverse nature of all of how we communicate. I have a background in acting, so I guess that's of some value. But I got into this really because of a part I played, and I'll come to it later, where I did a New York accent, and this voice coach helped me understand the origins of it, what shaped the accent. And the more you research, the more you realize, oh, there's lots of people who contradict. So I'm not going to try to go too far into it, but the point I make about this is that Marlon Brando made some very specific choices about how he played the Godfather. I think he had a throat issue going on, so that's when it became slightly throaty, right? And then he put the cotton wool balls in his mouth. And it became a bit more like this, you know. It's like he's talking the whole time like that, you know. And I started thinking, he's making that choice. Now, why is Charles using his voice like this, you see? And I thought, my God, there's a bit of a similarity going on here. Now, what I came to the conclusion was that it's about status. We have to work that much harder to hear them. We have to move towards them. They ain't moving towards us. And you can see that in all of the Brando. He doesn't make any effort at all. You're going to come towards me, right? You know. And I've got a little quiz for you. If you can tell, which one said this, Charlie 3 or the Don? Never tell anyone outside the family what you're thinking. Was it Charlie or was it the Don? Of course it was the Don, yeah. But it could be Charlie, couldn't it? I think that's probably what he's thinking. In fact, I think, who said this one? "I have a sentimental weakness for my children. They talk when they should listen." It's the Don again, of course it is. But I thought, my God, these could be things that Charles says about one or two of his family. So, yeah, it's an opportunity to think about how these accents get formed. And of course, Charles is of an era that perhaps is fading. That the received pronunciation, Queen's English, King's English, that he grew up learning, hasn't been adopted by his children. Certainly not William. He is more accessible. But this idea of the falling intonation that Charles used in his Queen's speech, you may not have heard that, but it's like that trailing off at the end, we're straining to hear. And it's interesting part of how the English upper class have used that intonation to really demand or expect that more people are going to crane forward and listen. So I'm particularly interested because it's not that I want to take the piss. I'm really curious about accents. And this picture amused me. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, but this little child imitating, is it dad and uncle? But so from an early age, we're looking to learn from those that we see, those that we love, and we obviously want love in return. And there's a bit of science here for you now. I don't know, was anyone ever heard of mirror neurons? Yeah? Some of you in the audience, yeah. So monkey see, monkey feel. The idea being that the brain cells that are active when a monkey picks up a ball are also active when it sees someone else pick it up. So we feel something that is going on over there. There's a bit of debate about whether there's empathy in this as well. But certain neurons get fired in our brains when we connect with someone. And maybe you've tested this yourself. When someone smiles in the street, it's like, oh, how lovely. You feel that sensation, and it sort of triggers an affirmative response for you. And I also get that when you think about what's it like to be another person, especially as an actor, and when you're walking. Have you ever tried to copy someone's walk? We did this as an exercise at drama school, but it's really very interesting to think how someone moves. Margaret Thatcher years ago, that I was told by drama teachers, she would lead with her nose, like this, you see. So that's an interesting idea. What's the character that leads there, or with their chest, you know? And so if you follow someone, and you know, I've seen people walk slightly differently like that, and it's like, oh, how interesting to move like that. So it's sort of a sense of, how do I begin to understand someone else? But I said that some of this came from a part that I played, the New York melting pot. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. So some of the origins that I was led to believe, and I've learnt a bit more about this, that New York, of course, was a place of immigration. And maybe the sense fighting to be heard is a phrase that would apply to them. So the whole manner of who was trying to be understood, the Irish, the Italians, the Germans. In fact, I understood rather late before this slide, the Dutch, of course, were there first. And so they introduced a different dialect or language. And so I've got that fighting to be heard, there's a joke I remember. Has anyone heard what a New York echo is? Yeah, you go, hello, fuck off. So it's that kind of thing that actually we're trying to make ourselves heard. So the idea that there's so many different accents in there, and this voice coach told me that, well, it moves forward in the face, right? So I'm trying to make myself, you see, I always get a bit squeezed. I'm trying to make myself understood, you stupid dumb ass, like this, you know? So it becomes very pushy, very forced, front of the face, right? And they also think that they started to copy some of the British pronunciation. So the or sound, the things like water becomes water. Yeah, so they lose the T. Call, we'd say call, they said call. You're going to make a call for me? So that's a little shift there. And then, of course, coffee. Coffee is different from coffee. So it's that rounded O sound gets squeezed out. So, and then they don't have the THs so much in New York because of the Netherlands. Netherlands is actually called Netherlands in the place itself. So they struggled with the Ds, or the THs became Ds. So instead of these and those, New Yorkers would say these and those, you know, like that. So it's an idea that the response to the history, the culture, and also the Italian, again, I played an Italian part once, and there's a whole posture and movement. Has anyone ever done this? But the Mediterranean approach is much more in their bodies. So you move like this. It's certainly true of people that I've seen in New York were there. And do you know the phrase, forget about it? You know, that becomes forget about it. Just forget about it. And that's that was led to believe that's part of the Italian. You know, it's like, hey, so it talks like that, and it's very expressive, it's very movement. Just forget about it, you know. So there's a lot of that movement and expression that is really so appealing. And then, oops, no way. I discovered this in my research, that the Southern accent was actually influenced by more them trying to copy the posh British accent. So in 1607, the wealth from cotton and tobacco was created. There's a rich upper class. And a lot of it also was influenced by Scots and Irish arriving there. So I've put that up as an attempt to try to understand, you know, when you go Southern is like, what you talking about? Like it goes a much more extended vowel sound like that. What you talking about? And then I thought, well, hang on. If you go up to Glasgow like that, that's what you're talking about. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's probably that's something of what in the Irish, you know, I know there's a Northern Irish accent over there as well, like that. That goes into, what you talking about? You know, like that, the whole time, like gets this nice rounded sound. So some of that begins to infiltrate into the South. And then you get those kind of accents the whole time. So it's fun to play with, oh, there's an origin that now shows up in this way. So I've now got the opportunity to think about, well, there's other English accents that we're familiar with. And I've got a little clip here, if I can get this to work. I think we know what this is. Dear Emma and the audience already knew, so she'd anticipated this. So let's see if this works.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
What a classic line. Is that going to go on? No, well, we'll go back a bit and wait for the next slide. But yeah, so there's well, he claims he's a Cockney. I think he probably was, born in the Bells of Bow. But I love that use of a limitation, perhaps, of the enunciation that we heard with Charles, who would enunciate a lot more of his words. But you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off, right? So it's a sliding and a loosening of the tongue that actually, you could say, is far more efficient. It's like, why would I want to make all those sounds like the glottal stop, we'll come to that, but to use a T and an H and just slide that through. But I picked up, because he did do Zulus, didn't he? And I remember that's when he did do a posh accent. I don't know if it worked as well as his normal accent, but there was the idea that I heard this when I was at school, that the idea was that actually Michael Caine, if he'd been a Cockney, he would have said something like, "Stop throwing those bloody spears at me." Which I thought would have been quite fun to play with his accent, and he might have actually had more impact on the Zulus, although it was a glorious defeat in the end. And so I wanted to pursue a little bit more of the Cockney accent, because maybe we can have a practice with this one. Has anyone seen Sexy Beast? Of course you have. Ben Kingsley. What a performance. And there was one dangerous man. And the way that I've said he's a nutter is the glottal stop. You're not bothering with the T's, right? So a glottal stop is So if you want to have a go along with me, just go and that's sort of the soft palate, that glottal stop, And so you just say nutter. He's a nutter, right? It's much more efficient, I guess. Why do I want to bother with a T, right? But if he was really insistent and wanted to emphasize it, I think you'd probably see him go, "You're a nutter," right? So they'd hit that. "You're a nutter." So it's kind of fun to play with how that might shift. Now, I think that this was beautifully explored in a famous advert that you probably remember. I don't know, some of the older members of the audience might remember this. This shift between Cockney or estuary English, Essex, and here we go.
The water in Mallorca doesn't taste like what it ought to.
The water in Majorca don't taste like what it ought to.
The water in Mallorca doesn't taste quite how it should.
Majorca!
Mallorca?
Majorca!
Mallorca?
Hi, Dale, any danger of some refreshment in here?
Here you are. Get your laughing gear on there.
Oh, golly. The water in Majorca
What's that?
don't taste like what it ought to. Gosh. The water in Majorca don't taste like what it ought to.
She's cracked it. She's only cracked it.
You're absolutely wrong.
Heineken refreshes the parts other beers cannot reach.
Oh, we'll leave that image up. Fun. Anyone else remember that? Yeah, it was a classic. So there they are, making fun and playing around with the sliding between these accents. And it is really interesting to imagine what it is to play that role or experience somebody else's style of communication. There's no right or wrong, of course. It's evolving all the time. In fact, they say that estuary English or Essex English is spreading further around the country, and people are evolving it, and the younger generation are owning different words. Of course, they perhaps should, in a way, to distinguish themselves from what's gone before. And I thought that maybe as a conclusion, we could just explore some different accents and maybe, as I say, the key words to get you in. That's one of the industry ways. What's your in to a language, to an accent? And I've put these tuning forks in simply because you don't have to be musical necessarily. You just kind of hear it. It's like once you're off with it, it kind of gets you in that way. And I went to South Africa a few years ago, and they use this word "how's it" quite a lot. And I thought, that's my key, that's my in. So it's a squeezed, like the Dutch, because of the Afrikaan. So they go, how's it? How's it? It's at the back of the throat, how's it? Anyone want to have a go at how's it? Yeah. How's it? That's it, yeah. How's it? Yeah, not how, at the back of the throat, how's it? And then you're off. You see, like that, you can talk like that the whole time. And, maybe I don't get all the things right, but it's a bit more of that South African. So the how's it is my way in, right? And then I had a lovely Welsh aunt who used to greet me at the door with these phrases. Come in, how are you, how are you? And I thought, oh, it's lovely to see you again, Nan. You see, and then I'd be off starting to be Welsh, and my kids were going, stop it, Dad, stop it. I thought, sorry, I forgot, But it was this musicality that was so lovely, you see. Come in, how are you? Which actually I discovered also straight into the Scouse accent. I'm not going to go there, but Scouse, as we know, isn't so far from Wales. So that's sort of, you could imagine it like, come in, how are you? Like, maybe that's more Welsh, but it's like, it certainly gets influenced by that accent. And of course, we've got Australian, which I'm sure everyone is familiar, the g'day, mate. And that's an easy in, I think, g'day. And I know that's certainly been influenced by the convicts that travelled there. I think I've got a bit of a note here. When was it? 1778? Well done. I haven't got a prize, I'm sorry. But yeah, the first contacts were around that time, and they came from all over this country, and so that was an amalgam, and the Australian accent has emerged from that. But maybe there's more of the sort of estuary type because the Australian, I went to work down there as a student, and I remember on a building site, and I arrived saying Australia. They took the piss out of me mercilessly. And when I asked for a bucket of sand, they laughed again, and they said, mate, it's sand. So I had to get hold of sand, you know, and come back saying Australia, and just slide the Australia. And for years after that, maybe when I got a bit drunk at a party, people would go, are you Australian? And it wasn't true, but you slip into that because it feels like it's, I don't know, a more efficient way of speaking. But the G'day is also interesting because it links back to some of, I think where's my note here, on the New York type thing. How's it going? I said, well, the South African, how's it going? They might, the Australians also say, how is it going? How's it going? Like that. So they'll adapt that, and that's another way in. And of course, yes, the Australians have vowel sounds that change from like. So it's I to oi, like. You know, like, mate, O-I, like oil, like. Do you like this? See, so you could play around with that as an in, like. Yeah. So I guess my point is really that I have loved exploring accents, the origins of them, and the diversity. I guess the great contrast that they bring, and that I guess I'm constantly curious about. How does that get spoken? How does that get expressed? And what's it like to feel it, whether it's mirror neurons or whatever it else is? It's like, there's a sense of maybe being just a little bit closer to that experience that someone else is having. So my final slide is really just life's rich tapestry, that we weave them together. We all are part of a wonderful tapestry, I suppose, and in exploring other people's accents, it maybe shines a light or reflects back on us about, what shaped my, and how much have I changed? And would I vary my accent if I moved abroad, like the little child? Is this imitation as flattery? Or is there a sense of, to be someone else is to also be a gift to yourself, I guess, of, there's more in me than perhaps I thought was possible. So that's kind of why I have loved the exploration of accents, and thank you so much for being here to listen to this. Thank you.
Philip Woodford, stay for some questions.